We've all tinkered with hobbies in college. And just like many of you watching this video, Sarvesh Agrawal, an IIT Madras graduate, decided to start a blog as a side project back in 2011. But little did he know that his passion project would end up becoming Internshala, one of India's biggest internship and upskilling platforms. We recently had the opportunity to welcome Sarvesh on campus and interact with our students. Join us as we dive deep into the story of Internshala and pick his brains about the business of internships.
Can you take us back to what led to the creation of Internshala? What was the starting line?
So, as a human, all of us face this at some point in time, especially when you're a student, you face this existential question about what's the purpose of my life. And the story of Internshala goes back to 2006, which was when I was in the final semester of my 5-year program at IIT Madras. Final year of engineering is always very philosophical, right?
Yes.
You start contemplating about life. You don't have study pressure. Placement ho gaya hai, to bahut chill ho, hai na? Or you want to philosophize. So that question always stayed with me as to what is the purpose of my life and how I'm doing something, what I'm doing, which will last beyond me. And much later, and this question always remained. Every now and then, I started my job with Capital One in UK, really cushy job, getting paid in pounds and sending back home. But this question always will come back every now and then, say, what are you doing which will last beyond you? What is your legacy? Why would people remember you, right? And so I came back to India saying I'll start something of my own. And I come from a very small town in Rajasthan, a place called Navalgarh. And I was the first one, I studied in Hindi medium, and I was the first one to make it to IIT from my hometown. And just because I had access to quality education, I could see the massive difference that made to my life versus my school friends' life who didn't go to IIT. So I always believed in the power of education. And I feel that for a country like India, if you want to uplift millions and millions of households and put them on a path to better life, education is the most remarkable, the most powerful tool to do that. So I always wanted to do something in the field of education. And I always wanted to do something because I said, this question of what is my legacy and how I'm going to live beyond it was there. And so what to do in education was not known to me, right? And it's so happened, I was trying to figure out what to do in education in 2010, when my last job was Aviva Life Insurance. A friend of mine who was from IIT Madras again and went to do his MBA from London Business School, he was looking for a summer internship in India and he couldn't find one, right? So I was surprised that somebody with that kind of pedigree, like you had IIT and LBS on your resume, you can't find an internship in India. That's amazing, right? And for millions of students who are not in so-called IITs and IITs, IIMs, what's the hope for them? And that sort of felt like a open space and wide space to solve for. So I thought maybe internship is one domain I should start in, and thus was born Internshala.
I think all of us don't even have this question in our mind anymore that where will we look for internships? It's such a seamless thought for every one of us here that, if you want an internship or even if you want to hire interns, Internshala is the way to go.
Absolutely.
Like I've personally used Internshala many times to hire people for my team.
Yes.
And it's worked out so well.
Correct.
And even for us in engineering, when we had to look for internships, that was the place we used to go. So I think you've really solved for that and solved it beautifully.
Thank you. Yeah.
So in running Internshala, how do you draw from your past experiences at Barclays, Aviva, Capital One to kind of structure Internshala and drive innovation?
So I think fundamentally innovation and past are at odds, right? I mean, innovation mostly comes from being in the now. And most of the innovation that at Internshala that we do is often by looking around what's happening right now and see what is the application of that at Internshala, right? So, but I'll come to the role of experience also in that. So, for example, I came across this very quirky innovation by ID Foods. You know ID Foods, the ID Dosa batter company. P. Mustafa, who's the founder, he shared on his LinkedIn profile that, when you go to supermarket, right, the hundreds of brands vying for your attention. You go to any section, you go to soap section, you go to biscuit section, you go to any fast consumable food, etc., right? So what they did was they put some technology in their packaging. If they deduct a customer movement in the aisle, right, the packet would sort of flutter like this, right? So if you imagine you're walking through a aisle full of products and you don't know which one to pick, right? Because you're sort of, once you go inside a supermarket, especially if you're a man, right? You sort of, oh God, there's so many choices. What do I choose, right? And this product, suddenly this bottle or this sachet would sort of start sparkling or fluttering in front of you, right? And sort of it captures your attention. That at least look at what it is. So I looked at that, right? Now I said on Internshala also, there's so many students who visit the website, and I want to sort of sell them my training program. And currently we have this static banner which says, okay, you want to learn web development, do it on Internshala, etc. But nobody pays attention to that. So can we build something equivalent of that on our website, where somebody is browsing through, something sort of moves a bit, it captures your attention more than a normal static ad would. So, and we did that, and we saw that our click-through rate on that ad became 3x of what it was before a static ad, right? So a lot of time, what I'm trying to say is innovation is always driven by looking at what's happening around you and connecting the dots as to how it could be relevant for your business, and then trying to make that happen. Now, the role of experience there is experience a double-edged sword, by the way. Experience is a good thing because it sort of helps you it helps you avoid costly mistakes. It also sort of acts as a baggage. A lot of times you don't try things because you think you've done it before and it didn't work, and hence it wouldn't work. But you try to sort of strike that balance and say, look, based on my past experience, how likely I think it is that it would work this time. And look at it very objectively. So that's the role of experience in sort of giving shape to your innovation.
I think you've made every single person in this room happy, because you've got UG folks, we've got PGP, and we've got PGP Rise, which is our for folks still working professionals. That's the course. Right. So in that one sentence, you made all of us happy that, okay, if we have experience, good. If we don't have experience, that's also good.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Let's talk a little bit about strategy now. How do you sketch out and kickstart growth plans for Internshala?
It's interesting. My philosophy of growth and where does Internshala go next is always built on, as a business, you always have a core, right? You crack that first. You always build on your strengths. So you imagine you have this very, very powerful concentric circle of what your strengths are. Then you look at what is the next thing that you could do and sort of go and conquer that market. And then you say, what's the next thing that you can do? You can conquer that market. And very soon you realize it's a fairly powerful circle, a very large circle that you've gotten. And let me illustrate with the Internshala example. So when we started an internship platform, we got internships really right? And I'll equate that to Masters Union example also. We were the best platform to find internships, right? Nobody else could do as good a job of getting an internship or finding an intern as Internshala did. So we realized that we sort of solved that problem. That's our asset now. Now that we solved the internship market, what do we build next? Right? It's a very natural extension of that was skilling. So a lot of students who come to the platform looking for internships, right? And they don't have the skills, and hence companies can't hire them. And then it's lost for everybody. So can we build skilling on top of the Internshala platform? Because the CAC problem is solved. All of you know what is CAC, right? It's written out right across the room, right? So CAC problem is solved, which is a Achilles heel for any edtech business. So we launched skilling on our platform. So it on one hand, it helps students acquire industry-relevant skills in a really affordable way. On the other hand, it created a monetization engine for Internshala. And the third piece is companies now started getting lot more trained workforce than before. So it's been win-win-win, right? So we built that. And then a few years later, we said, okay, now we've done a good job of internship, we've done a good job of skilling. Same companies, same students, now when they go for full-time jobs, they go to other platforms which are not as friendly, as seamless as Internshala is. So we launched fresher jobs on our platform. And it became a very natural extension of what we were doing because we already had that strength with us. So that became a success. Once we solved for fresher jobs, or we sort of built reasonable progress there, the skilling programs that used to be certification programs became a placement guarantee course, a longer duration, what we have master's camp, for example, here, right? So I think my strategy for growth, it's always been that look at where you are strong right now and see what's the immediate next thing that you can go and conquer that. And then, take one step at a time. And very soon you realize you've sort of gone very far. And it's very similar to Masters Union, right? You started with a flagship PGP program and you built a name for it in the last 3-4 years that gave you confidence to start PGP Rise, PGP Camp, and the UG program, right? So we realized that, okay, there's a brand established, the pedagogy problem is solved, we know the industry connect. Now, how do I leverage it for different offerings? So I think that's essentially how most of the businesses operate.
So when you mentioned fresher jobs, how does Naukri and LinkedIn offer you competition? Because they are very concentrated in that same space, which is of getting people jobs and connecting people.
Not really, because Naukri, LinkedIn, all these platforms are more focused on the lateral jobs, right? Once 2 years of experience, etc. nobody has looked at one of the reasons why Internshala could succeed was we built Internshala in the internship space when no one was looking. Right? Everybody wanted to go for after experienced hiring, which is where the money was. Like if, for example, Naukri has been running a platform called First Naukri for the last 13 years. I'm sure most of us have not even heard of it.
Yeah.
Right? So I think now Internshala calls itself the largest early talent platform, which is -2 of your college to +2 of your college is the space that we own. Right? So I think just being absolutely focused on the definition that we are here to serve the college students and help them get the best out of their careers is our USP. And we understand this audience, this market better than anybody else. Right? So I think just the question of focus. At the end of the day, anybody can beat anybody in anything. But I think if you're Naukri has 15 things to look at. Right? For Freshers is one small part of it. Or internship is just very, very small part of it. For it's everything. And when something is everything for you, right, it's very hard to sort of beat that. Ukraine-Russia war.
That becomes your right to win.
That's my right to win, right? Ukraine-Russia war. For Russia, winning Ukraine is, okay, it happens great, doesn't happen great, right? For Ukraine, it's a question of survival. If Russia wins, I'm gone. Right? So that's why they would fight so much harder than anybody else, right? So I think really being focused in the consumer segment that you care about and owning that like nobody else would, right? I think that's essentially what gives us our right to win.
So that we can extrapolate to all of us who are starting here as well, that find that one thing and just go really deep in
Correct.
it
Yeah.
and build that as your
there's a term called, which I'm not sure whether it's right, but it says 2 inch wide and a mile deep, right? So that's essentially what it is, right? Find your 2 inch, then go mile deep in that. Then you are sort of built a very, very, you carved out a niche for yourself.
Then that nobody can come close to you after
nobody
that.
can come close to you then. And then you sort of say, okay, how do I increase the width from 2 inch to 4 inch, 6 inch, 8 inch, 12 inch, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Awesome. So balancing big dreams, planning, and its execution is extremely essential for any startup.
Yeah.
How do you manage to keep them aligned more so now that Internshala has been running for so long?
Right. I don't think we do a very good job of it, to be honest. I'm very, very impulsive. आज रात को idea है तो कल implement करना है ना? So I think it's always a dilemma that an entrepreneur faces, that you always feel very excited about something and you feel it should be done overnight, right? And then your team has to sort of, either you have that tendency yourself or your team sort of safeguards you against your own self-destructive tendencies and say, bhaiya, don't go and ruin it. But I think over time, there are 2-3 things that we're trying to get better at as an organization. One is the planning piece. Though there's between the dream and the execution is a massive chasm called planning. How do you plan? What resources would be needed, right? How much time should we give to this project? What should be my success metric and how to define it? How do you decide, okay, this is my sort of stop loss check, that if I don't get to this stage in these many months, I'll call it off, right? We never did that before. It was all very impulsive, acha laga bana do, right? But now we sort of try to define, be more disciplined about the planning process. And the good advantage of planning process, a lot of times, a lot of things that sound exciting on paper, right? When you sort of put your mind to it and start putting some, okay, how big this can become, is it really worth the time, is it the most efficient way to do it? You realize a lot of things a lot of mistakes can be avoided if you just spend time thinking about it beforehand. So I think we're just trying to get better at that over time.
So more deliberation.
More deliberation, definitely, yes.
And you mentioned that, your team kind of protects you from yourself.
Right.
So when you're scouting for new team members or even when you were building your core team, what was it that you were looking for?
So it has changed over time, but I think let me give you 4 things which are really essential for anybody who joins Internshala from my standpoint. The first one is curiosity. We live in a world which is always changing. So skills that you have are of no use tomorrow, right? But what is really essential is curiosity. Are you continuously looking to learn and upgrade yourself on a continuous basis? And are you curious? Because if you're curious, then you'll find ways to sort of learn that and upgrade yourself. So I think curiosity is really essential. Hard work. So I'm a big fan of people who come from, especially who come from sort of middle-class background, middle-class values, where they've really struggled hard. There should be at least one example in your life when you sort of went after something. It could be a board exam, it could be your any competition exam or anything that you wanted to do, right? But there should be at least one example in life when you worked really hard, like 18, 20 hours a day, right? Because you're really passionate about something and you can put in those hours. But that's what eventually a startup is about, right? You have to, unfortunately or fortunately, you have to put in the hours that are required. Third is integrity, which is absolutely, I mean, if at any point in time in your life, you're taking shortcuts or you sort of come and try to lie on your resume, all these are red flags. Because in life, in the long run, people who take shortcuts get found and get caught, and it's not a good situation to be in. And fourth for me particularly, and I know it's a bit odd, is punctuality. Right? I really dig. I'm in office at 9:30, and I want everybody to be in office by 9:30. Not because it's at some sort of discipline or is military, but I think it just sets the right example for everybody that we are in it together. So nobody has to second guess whether this person is coming in office or not coming in office, and sort of gives a clear message to everybody that we are, all of us follow the same values that are important to us. So time is really important to us. These are the four things that I think, and fifth is humility, right? And again, I grew up idolizing people like Narayan Murthy, Ratan Tata, and they're very humble, very down to earth people, right? They don't show off a lot. So I really sort of, fundamentally, culture of any organization is extension of the founder's personality. So for me, that's important. When I'm looking for somebody senior who's directly working with me, then I look for rigor, structured thinking. A lot of time we are looking at white space problems. We don't know what will be out there, right? And we really need somebody who can put structure to it, the planning part that I spoke about, right? So we really need rigor and structured thinking as an example.
So you were talking about how you hire for people now, but when you first started,
Correct.
Was that the first time you were actually building a team when you started Internshala, or in your previous organizations you had to build teams as well?
No. So I had small hiring done before I joined, but Internshala was the first time I started hiring. And interestingly, Internshala has been built by a team of interns, right? We are today 300 plus people, and 250 of them started as interns at Internshala. And it's more of a chance than a choice, and I'll come to that part in a minute. So we often say Internshala is of the interns, for the interns, and
by the
interns, right? And so why we went down that route? First of all, back then, 2011, right? So I started myself as a side project that I used to do along with my day job, right? So once sort of scale of operation started growing, that I can't manage it myself, I need to find people. Now there are two constraints that we had. One is we didn't have any money, right? So how do I go and hire people who are experienced and already paying how I pay them salary? Second is, on one hand, I'm trying to tell every startup in India that interns can do wonders, right? And you should hire interns. So I need to live that myself. I need to sort of demonstrate that myself. So we started hiring interns. And where did we hire interns? How did we hire interns? Through Internshala, right? So we had access to the best intern talent pool in India because they were all on Internshala. So that became our core belief even till today. Wherever possible, we hire interns. You're from SRM, right?
Yes.
Farhan, head of VP growth at Internshala, joined us as an intern in 2015 for 6 months as a business apprentice intern. And in 8 years, he's grown he heads our growth function today. So that's how we sort of built the team. Now, when you're hiring interns, obviously what you're looking for is only two things. One is fire, right? That how much do they really want to make a dent? And I would interview. Can you imagine how long an intern interview would last, hiring process would last?
40 minutes, 60 minutes?
No, I used to interview for them like 2 hours interviews over 3 days. So I used to interview an intern for 6 hours. I used to ask them, अपने बचपन से मुझे बता दो क्या किया है? Where did you go to school? What did you do in school? What kind of student you were? What kind of friends you made? What would your friends say about you? Tell me about this project, about this teacher, etc. Because I was really hiring interns as I was looking for a co-founder. Because these were actually the co-founders. Somebody whom I hired as an intern for content went on to head a content function, and she was the only person doing the content. So I really needed somebody who was up for it. And she was a 12th student and going to college, right? So I really sort of indexed very heavily on hiring interns and putting as much effort and sincerity in hiring them as you would do for a senior person or a
That's your founding
co-founder.
Team, right?
Yeah, that's my founding team. So that's how we sort of went about. And I said, whether they had a fire in the belly, whether they were curious, whether they were humble, and whether they had integrity, right? These are the 4 things that you used to look for. And if that's there, I think you would be in. Yeah. And which goes back to the earlier point I was talking about experience, right? So a lot of time we overrate experience. And then these interns did wonders because they didn't have any baggage. They didn't know what is not possible. For them, everything is possible. Like in college, right? We think everything is possible. And I think at times you need that sort of
Optimism.
Optimism and foolish optimism, to make things happen. Because if everything was based on the past itself, then humanity won't progress, right?
Right.
It has to build on something. And I think a lot of times you need that. So lack of experience also is an advantage if you play it right.
I think for all of us who are looking to now start getting interns on board, you've given us 4 really good metrics to gauge whether we should take them on or not. And these 2 hour interviews, I mean, unheard of.
Correct. Yeah.
Especially for interns.
All
of us would have probably been interviewed for 30 minutes when we were applying for internships at max.
Yeah. It's not a pleasant experience. It's not for everybody. When I used to interview, they would say, "Bhaiya, ek 5,000 rupees ki internship ke liye itni mehnat, please rehne do." So I think that's also self-selection, right? If somebody cannot withstand that kind of, because that's how I work. I really work with you, and not just interview. Once you get hired, that's how I'm going to work with you. कि तुमने आज article लिखा है, तो बताओ उसने क्या लिखा है, कैसे लिखा है. So if you can't stand that scrutiny, that questioning, and that rigor, then anyway it's not going to work. So it's in a way that sort of filters out people.
So the first 25 people at Internshala, you were the one hiring them through those grueling 6-hour interviews?
Absolutely, everyone. I think till 70, 75, I hired everyone, or maybe till 100. And then sort of hierarchy kicked in. But the team does the same thing.
Right.
So when they hire, there are a lot of assignments. And then
now the values are codified. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it organically came through in the process as well, right? Correct. When you were trying to get to know them and then you were able to figure out who would sustain in this network and who would not.
Correct.
So looking ahead now, how do you see Internshala influencing the future of education and employment? It already has made such a big mark on us as a country, but going forward, what do you see Internshala progressing towards?
So there's a phrase at Internshala that you say, a bit of Internshala in every resume, right? So in 2000, Steel Authority of India Limited used to bring out an ad on TV. Many of you wouldn't know, Doordarshan channel hota DD News. So there's a bit of sale in everybody's life. So they would show a kid walking and a mother putting in a safety pin on that kid and all of that. And this is made of steel. Or so they should say safety pin to satellite. There's a bit of sale in everybody's life. And I think that's how I think of Internshala, that there's a bit of Internshala in every resume. Be it finding your internship, be it learning a skill, or getting your first job. I think my dream is there should be a bit of Internshala in every resume. On the corollary of that is there's a bit of Internshala in every team, right? So every entrepreneur, every large enterprise who's building teams, I'm assuming at least one team member in that team has been hired using Internshala. So that's essentially where I aspire Internshala to be. I think Internshala and India's destiny at some day will be entwined, right? So as India grows, right, I hope Internshala plays an incredible role in that journey. And that sort of goes back to the original starting point, that what is my purpose of life, right? So if I could say that I built Internshala, which in whatever smallest possible way helped India become the fastest growing economy or the most developed nation in some way, I think that's enough for me to rest in peace.
I think we all have been interns at some point in time, and a lot of us would have gotten them through Internshala. So definitely you can very proudly say that it has participated quite heavily in India's growth. Yeah. So what skills do you believe are essential for success today, both within Internshala and the broader industry?
So within Internshala, I already spoke about what are the traits that I look for.
Other than those 4.
So I think now that we are living in a world which is so volatile. How many of you know about Devin? Devin. कौन जानता है Devin के बारे में?
Just software engineer, the AI-based engineer.
How many of you know about Emma? Emma? It's another startup just came out before Devin, enterprise machine assistant. And apparently she can do a lot of things, non-programming things, customer service and all of that, right? So I think in a world which is like in last 4 years, right from COVID till now, we have gone through as humanity more than what we have gone through in the last 40 years. Right? The future is constantly unpredictable. I mean, it's never been predictable, but more and more uncertain, right? So I think only 2 things that are going to, 3 things rather, that are going to be very, very crucial. One is learning agility, right? How do you constantly, curiosity, right? Going back to curiosity. How do you constantly, can you keep learning every day, right? Don't sort of feel stagnant, right? At 40, I feel I know nothing. One of the reasons I'm here is because, and I'll talk about that in a later conversation, in a later question, because I feel that I need to learn so much from the world, because the world is always changing, right? I can never, in cricket, you're only as good as your last inning, right? It's same is true for career also. You're only as good as your last month or last quarter, right? So you need to constantly learn and upgrade yourself with what is happening and be in the now. So I think learning agility is really going to be important. First principle thinking. How many of you know what's first principle thinking? No? First
everyone knows.
What, why? So imagine, so my professor used to say at IIT, imagine, he used to teach us structural engineering, all the formulas, etc. And he says, imagine one day the world has experienced a catastrophe and all these knowledge books, everything is destroyed, right? Can you rebuild the world from scratch? How would you do that? You'll think about what, why, how, very, very fundamental questions, and then solve based on that. So I think that's really increasingly going to be more and more important. And first principle thinking, because you don't know what you're dealing with. And the only tools, only weapons that you have are these questions, 5 Ws and 1 H,
Yes.
right? So that's really important. All these पोर्टर के 4P और उसके 6X, S और उसके 7Y कुछ नहीं चलने वाला है ना. Fundamentally, you have to go back to imagine marketing के 4Ps are such a well-known philosophy. The person who founded that Porter, right?
Porter's 5 forces, yeah.
And what company he used to run? He used to run a consulting company, right? कौन सी थी? Does anybody know? That consulting company went bankrupt. So now you're going to live in a world, there's not going to be any place, for example. So I think constantly being able to think and solve problems from first principles is going to be important. And third thing, which I think is personal branding. Because opportunities are flying at a very rapid pace and you need to be out there yourself. I'm an introvert, and if it was 2 years ago, for example, I would not have accepted this invitation because I'm very introvert. And but then I realized it's important for me to go out and interact with people, learn from them, share what I have learned with them, so that maybe some of you would find value in that and maybe write to me, and it will spark a collaboration, it will spark that idea and all of that. Maybe I'll learn something from the process. So there are different ways you can find your way to put yourself out there. And I think do that, and you will realize that there is something that you can learn. So I think learning agility, first principle thinking, and personal branding are my 3 advice to anybody who wants to build a career or to live life, for that matter.
So, in your opinion, what aspects of a company's culture are most important for fostering success and innovation? Because each company has a different culture.
So I think you can look at again, I'll demonstrate an example of first principle thinking, which I said is really important, right? So you said what is important for success and innovation.
Yes.
Let's define what is innovation. Where does innovation come from? Innovation comes from a lot of experimentation, right? And where do the experiments come from?
From trying.
From trying. And from bringing ideas to the table, right? So if you're an organization which is open to ideas, and if you are an organization which doesn't say that only CEOs gets the best idea, right? That's really important, right? So you have to build a culture which tells everybody, right from the junior most person to the senior most person, that ideas are what matter, not your titles and not your designation. So everybody in the room should feel that they have a right and the opportunity and obligation to share ideas. That's one thing, right? So you have to create an environment which encourages that, right? Second is whenever you do experiments, most of the time they will fail. So you have a very high tolerance for failure. As an organization, if you are only looking for success and you blame people when they fail, then next time they won't try. And if they don't try, then the innovation won't happen, right?
So freedom to fail.
Freedom to fail is absolutely very right word, and it's very important, right? And that's the second part. You can do everything right, but you still fail, it's okay. And third is room to make mistakes, right? Because a lot of times when you're experimenting, innovating, you are doing it in a rush. You may miss certain things, and you may have to sort of redo it all over again. But you have to allow people certain leeway to make mistakes, genuine mistakes. And so I say at Internshala, it's always good to make mistakes, but it's not okay to repeat the same mistake twice, right? So I think for innovation, these 3 things are really important. Creating an open culture which allows everybody to chip in ideas, creating the space that screams that freedom to fail exists, and there's always room to make mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake twice, hopefully, right? And same is about success. What is success? If it is big dreams and making them happen, right? Then create a space which allows everyone to dream bigger. So, and every time you go into a conversation, say, look, how do we make it bigger? How do we make it bigger? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Ask those questions. And then create an environment which encourages results, which says, okay, make it, for example, make it happen is one of our culture. Dream big and make it happen are the first two culture values that we have. Right? So make it happen.
And when you mentioned, like nowadays, it's also important to tell the world you're doing. And we've seen a resurgence of a lot of founders becoming content creators and actually talking about their journey. And that's inspired a lot more of us to actually keep pushing ourselves through the grind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you think that personal brand that a founder builds is also equally proportional to how important the work they are doing?
So I think again, it's a mixed view. It's also, I think you have to realize that personal branding it takes a lot of time and effort, right? And as an entrepreneur, especially if you are running a business as large as Internshala is, then it's already always caught up with so many things, right? So you have to find the balance that works for you. But I think some bit of personal branding is essential. Otherwise, how do you attract talent, right? Otherwise, how do you attract partners? How do you get to know what's happening in the world? So I think some bit of putting yourself out there is important. So while I say that, I also know that hundreds of businesses whose founders we don't know, but they are actually billion-dollar businesses, right? So what I'm saying, take it with a pinch of salt, right? The businesses which are, so how many of you seen that chart which came on LinkedIn, ki Mamaearth got listed and then Cello also got listed, the company which makes these plastic furniture, right? And we all know who Mamaearth's founder is, right? Do we know who Cello's founder is?
No.
No, right? But it's actually a lot more profitable. It had a much better stock market debut than Mamaearth. So I'm also learning this. I'm trying to find the balance between how much you need to put yourself out there and versus hype. So
I think that's a personal choice. Then we all have to find our own sweet spot.
Correct.
And then take it.
But I think also interesting because what gives you kick? If your objective is to build a solid business, there are examples of people who've done it without putting themselves out there. But then there are founders, or all of us are driven by some bit of recognition, fame all the time, right? So if you're doing it because it gives you recognition, that's also okay, right? But I think you have to sort of figure out why you're doing it and sort of be true to that purpose and then do it. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much.